for the second round. This time, where 6 comes from the left and 7 from the right.
Up there have been having a wonderful time this weekend. Perhaps there are many in that crowd that may have seen Ayrton Senna race here on the streets of Monte Carlo. We talk these days about the rivalry between Rosberg and Hamilton. How about the rivalry, the legendary rivalry between Senna and Prost? And of course his records as far as pole positions and victories, and the argument that goes on forever if the three-time world champion was, of course, the all-time greatest. Well, in pit lane, there are a couple of decals this week that we could not ignore. This one at the McLaren Mercedes camp. Of course, Senna had 5 of his 6 wins with the McLaren organisation, and just a few spots down the road at Mercedes, they've been displaying this all year long. Keep fighting Michael, of course, referring to Michael Schumacher, the 7-time world champion, who continues to fight for his life back at home now after that terrible, terrible skiing accident in December. It has been 20 years since the Brazilian Ayrton Senna lost his life in the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, and effectively, if you like, on that day, passing the torch in Formula One to be the best in the sport over to Michael Schumacher. Now, it may have been 20 years, but there is not a single person in this Formula One paddock, as every day goes by, they don't at least mention Senna's name or spare a thought.
I feel he is the driver still that everyone aspires to be. Like, you know, even though they say they might suggest another driver, I know deep down inside I want to be like him.
I think Ayrton is kind of king, you know, for us in Brazil. What he did for Brazil, what he did for so many things, for the kids, you know. For sure, he's still, you know, maybe the most important name in Brazil.
He really is a legend to my generation, because we haven't seen him, just heard about him, you know.
The majority of today's Formula One drivers were just a few years old when Ayrton Senna was killed. It's a huge compliment that his memory remains strong with this generation, while the witnesses of his skills remain equally impressed.
He was the distilled essence of a 100% racing driver. At some point in his development, he realised he had a mission to fulfil, and his mission was to win.
Immense brain power, charm, charisma, and determination like we can't believe. All the things that made him a true world champion.
A man driven by his heart rather than his head in many respects. The greatest God-given talent I've ever raced against.
Passion for driving a Formula One car almost certainly derived more pleasure from it than any driver I knew.
Beyond the passion and world championships was an enigma. A deeply religious and philanthropic man, yet capable of ruthless and dangerous manoeuvres. In 1994, a conflicted Senna left McLaren, his home for 6 successful seasons, for the Williams team, who had developed a quicker car. However, upstart Benetton driver Michael Schumacher took the opening rounds as Senna and his new team struggled entering the San Marino Grand Prix. It was the weekend that shook Formula One to its core. The warning came in Friday practice, where Rubens Barrichello had a narrow escape. Then, during Saturday's qualifying, Roland Ratzenberger became the first driver to be killed during a Grand Prix weekend in 12 years. With a somber tone, the race went ahead. On lap 7, Ayrton Senna was leading Michael Schumacher, when a chance for the next great rivalry in Formula One was lost. Instead, the torch had been passed, and F1 was about to change. Only nobody knew that just yet.
We were told on the grid when we did the restart that I was certainly told he was okay, which I'm angry about to this day. And so we raced past the pool of his blood for 55 laps.
With questions surrounding the cause of Senna's accident, Brazil and the world mourned their hero. Formula One limped into its biggest race of the year.
Monaco was almost like a lost weekend. It was a weekend that was kind of got through rather than attacked in the way it ought to be.
We stood on the grid with a minute's silence, and I've got to be really honest, I saw all the young guys there looking like rabbits in the headlights, and I thought, I can beat you lot today. I finished second in the race, and that's the driver's mentality. When you go racing, you go racing.
No one exemplified that mentality more than the day's winner, Schumacher. The young German fended off Senna's teammate Damon Hill at season's end for the first of a record 7 titles, but generously recognised what might have been.
For me, it was always clear that I'm not going to win the championship, and it's Ayrton who is going to win the championship, and I'd like to take this championship and give it to him.
Schumacher continued to ascend in the record books. He tied Senna's win total at Monza in 2000, and the significance wasn't lost.
Do those records mean a lot to you?
Yes, it does mean a lot to me.
However, Senna's lasting impression on the sport won't be the benchmark statistics. It's the raft of safety changes made following his death, helping to protect the very generation that idolises him.
I can drive today knowing that if we do have a big crash, I'm safe. I can get away from it.
The last big one we saw was Felipe Massa in 2009 Budapest, but with the helmet getting better, so he's still here racing with us today.
For sure, everything is thanks to Ayrton, because the improvement after his accident was a very big improvement.
Racing will never be entirely safe, but thanks to lessons learned, Ayrton Senna is the last driver to be killed in a Formula One car. Safety is his legacy, but thankfully we have memories too.
Strangely, his death meant he was the hero, ultimate racing driver, right up to the moment he lost his life. But he wouldn't have had it any other way.
Just an incredibly moving piece there, and we want to thank our production staff for putting that together. What feelings and thoughts does that evoke in you?
Well, Jimmy Clark was one of my heroes. He got killed, and I thought, you know, it's impossible. He can't get killed. And then nothing happened to safety, of course. Then Senna got killed, and of course it did make a massive amount of changes to the whole of racing that we know today. There's no doubt about it. That made a huge help. But I was lucky enough to be doing TV when Senna was racing, and my lasting impression is one of absolutely amazing smoothness. He could go faster than anybody else, and you really thought, he's lost it. You know, this isn't the lap. And it always was. It was uncanny.
Steve, you were in this very pit lane in a team from Benetton up against Senna. I mean, did you pretty much line up thinking that you couldn't beat him?
Pretty much. When I graduated into Formula One, Senna and Ron Dennis had a very close relationship, and McLaren and Senna were the team to beat. They were the competition. I never had the honour of being able to work with Senna, but I had the thrill of racing against him with Benetton. And every year we would come here, and every year we would get beaten by Senna, until 1993, where we had a fantastic car, active suspension on the car. And I thought we were in with a chance. We out-qualified them, got into the race, and lap 34, a 50-cent O-ring found in the active suspension, put Michael Schumacher out. Senna went on to win the race. We never, ever were able to beat him in his town here.
From one legend to another, the motorsport and Formula One world farewelled another legend. Sir Jack Brabham, the first Australian to ever win a race and a world championship, the 3-time world champion who also won one of those championships in a car that bared his own name. His legacy lives on with his grandsons racing in the US and the United Kingdom. And on the day of the Indianapolis 500, this is the man who triggered the rear-engine car movement at the Indy 500. He was affectionately known as Black Jack. Sir Jack Brabham passed away at the age of 88.